Water, a simple compound consisting of two hydrogen atoms covalently bonded to one oxygen atom, with an angle of approximately 105 degrees. But this comparatively simple molecule is one of the most abundant and most important in biochemistry, with approximately 60% of the human body being comprised of water. Indeed, water is considered so essential for life that the search for life on other planets centers around finding evidence of extraterrestrial water. So what makes water so important? It is largely due to the polar nature of the molecule, and we touched on this when discussing weak bonding. The oxygen atom has a higher electronegativity than hydrogen, meaning that it has a greater pull on the shared electrons of the covalent bonds. Therefore, the electrons are closer to the oxygen than the hydrogen, and a polar bond is created, with the oxygen acquiring a partially negative charge, shown here by 2 delta minus, while the hydrogen atoms each acquire a partially positive charge, shown as delta plus. The bent shape of water is crucial because it means that the two OH bonds do not cancel each other out, and the water molecule as a whole is therefore polar. By their very nature, polar molecules attract one another through dipole-dipole forces. The positive end of the water molecule is strongly attracted to the lone pair of electrons on the negatively charged oxygen, forming a hydrogen bond. Remember, a hydrogen bond is just a special type of dipole-dipole interaction that can only occur in specific circumstances, but it is stronger than a conventional dipole-dipole interaction. Because each oxygen atom has two lone pairs of electrons, it's capable of forming hydrogen bonds to two other molecules. In the case of water, this means that the geometric shape around each oxygen atom approximates a tetrahedron, with each water molecule bonding, on average, to 3.4 other water molecules in its liquid state. And water is therefore ordered and cohesive, with a high surface tension. Essentially, water is sticky, and you can see this in the picture of water droplets bound to a spider's web. But it also allows for plants and trees to grow much higher than they otherwise could, as the water molecules can be drawn up the plant via transpiration, essentially forming a column of water inside the plant that cannot be broken by gravity. This cohesion also makes water an exceptionally good thermal insulator, being able to release or absorb large amounts of energy without changing the temperature significantly, which helps keep a stable internal environment for our cells. The reason for this is the presence of these hydrogen bonds. As heat is provided to water, it increases the kinetic energy of the molecules. But in order for water to move from a liquid to gas state, the hydrogen bonds need to be broken, which takes quite a bit of energy compared to other liquids. Another important phenomenon is Brownian motion, which describes the random motion of all molecules, not just water, but it's determined by the surrounding temperature, as increasing the temperature increases the energy of the molecules and their random movement. This random motion of water molecules helps facilitate many biochemical reactions. For example, allowing signaling molecules to find their target, or enzymes to interact with their substrate. And water is the medium that allows for this Brownian motion to occur within our bodies. Now, if carbon is considered the building block of life, then water is the solvent of life, and has a profound effect on the different types of weak bonds we can find in our bodies and in molecules. It can weaken some while promoting the formation of others. But just because we describe water as a solvent of life does not mean it is a universal solvent. In fact, the hydrophobic interactions with molecules that cannot dissolve in water are equally important to life. For example, fat driving the formation of lipid bilayers, or the intricate three-dimensional shape of our biomolecules, in particular proteins, being partially powered by interactions between water and hydrophobic regions of these molecules. Many compounds, however, do dissolve in water. Example of this is table salt or sodium chloride. NaCl dissolves in water because the ionic bonds between the positively charged sodium ion and the negatively charged chloride ion are broken, as these bonds bind instead to water molecules. Note how the water molecules orientate themselves around the sodium and chloride ions, with opposite charges attracting. So around the sodium ion, which is positively charged, the delta negative oxygen atoms are closest, whilst the delta positively charged hydrogen ions are closest to the negatively charged chloride ions. Brownian motion then allows the random transport of these ions within the aqueous solution of our cells, which can result in biochemical reactions. Fundamentally for life, hydrophobic molecules, as demonstrated here by drops of oil in water, cluster together in an organized structure. The second law of thermodynamics drives this clustering of hydrophobic molecules because it reduces the number of water molecules that are held in an ordered fashion around the hydrophobic molecules. For example, here we can see two individual non-polar molecules, each surrounded by 8 water molecules. However, if these molecules cluster together, then only 10 water molecules are held around the hydrophobic molecules, releasing 6 water molecules back into the randomness of the surrounding solution, and therefore increasing entropy or the overall randomness of the solution. The hydrophobic molecules are not necessarily attracted to each other, but they are driven together spontaneously to create a thermodynamically favourable arrangement. It is this increase in entropy that permits the formation of continuous phospholipid bilayers, which make up our cell membranes, with the hydrophilic polar heads orientated towards the aqueous cytoplasm or the surrounding of our cells, and the non-polar hydrophobic tails protected between these polar layers and stabilized by van der Waals forces. These bilayers are essential for defining cell boundaries as well as subcellular compartments. Protein folding is also partially driven by hydrophobic forces. The essential roles that proteins play in the biochemistry of our cells is enabled by the ability to form complex three-dimensional structures. And as long as the protein sequence is the same, then proteins have a remarkable ability to fold consistently into the same three-dimensional shape. The classic double helix shape of DNA is also partially supported by the ordered arrangement of water around the molecule. If DNA were not able to take on this shape, all of the information encoded within the DNA would be useless, as it would not be copied or passed on. The enzymes that are responsible for these processes require this specific shape in order to bind and function. The final property of water that we are going to briefly touch on here is its ability to partially ionize. Water can partially dissociate into hydronium ions, or H3O+, and hydroxyl ions, OH-. When we write this as an equilibrium equation, we tend to simplify the hydronium ion to H+. So the equilibrium equation is shown as H2O on the left and H+ and OH- on the right, with the dynamic equilibrium shown by the half forwards and half backwards arrows. Experimentally, the concentration of hydrogen and hydroxyl ions has been determined as 1 × 10⁻⁷ molar, and this allows us to calculate the equilibrium constant of water using the equation the concentration of hydrogen ions multiplied by the concentration of hydroxyl ions divided by the concentration of H2O, or water. So this is 10⁻⁷ multiplied by 10⁻⁷ divided by the molarity of water, which we can calculate as 55.5 molar. And this gives the equilibrium constant of water as 1 × 10⁻⁻16 molar. We will revisit this concept and its importance biochemically in more detail when we look at pH and buffers in a future video. So in this video, we have looked at the fundamental role that water plays in biochemistry, allowing life on Earth to flourish. We discussed some of the key properties of water that allow it to carry out this role, including its polarity, its cohesion, and its thermal properties. We also looked at how the interaction between hydrophobic and hydrophilic regions of molecules allows for the complex three-dimensional shaping of biomolecules, which are so essential for life. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, then please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel and click the bell icon so that you'll be notified of any new videos when they are released. If you have any questions about the content covered in this video, then please post them in the comments below and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. I hope to see you in the next video.